Hey, what's going on, everyone? Well, today is the day. This is week two of my doubleheader. Last week I had Dr. Ron O'Neill, and we talked about his book Beyond Death in Jail. And today I have Jeff St. James of the Ask a Brother podcast. So I wanted to start a few minutes early to warm the seat and give folks a little bit of a chance to come in here. Thank you to whomever gave me that like beforehand. That is always appreciated. Let me make sure that I am broadcasting to YouTube. And as you come in, let me know who is there in the audience. Please smash that like button. And no matter wherever our conversation goes, let us know what you think there in the chat. Let's see. Yep, the stream has started on YouTube. There is an ad. All right. Now, I don't know why I don't see that comment there. Louis Harper, thank you for being here. This comment is showing here in the backstage, but it's not showing on the YouTube side for some reason. So salute to developmental apostle. You were the first one in technically. All right, everybody. So I've said this before numerous times here that if I could have my way, I'd spend the rest of my life writing books and interviewing interesting people about what they're doing. And Jeff St. James certainly falls under that category. Um, and we're going to talk about all of that on the other side of my introduction. I'll make this announcement now, and then I'll make it again once we start. I have a slate of questions for Jeff. I only have Jeff for a fixed amount of time, so if you have questions for Jeff throughout this discussion, I will read them if you super chat them. So that will help with. I can't get to everything everybody says in the chat tonight. So if you have something you want me to ask in particular, I will entertain that if you super chat it. So with that, I'm going to play the intro, and then I'm going to bring up Jeff St. James, and we're going to talk about blank slate theory, gender roles, modern relationships, therapy, a litany of things. So I'll see you on the other side. Please smash that like button on the way in. This is my Curtis Schoon intro. Once again, there are no political solutions for cultural deficiencies. So, where did this topic come from? So, I'm going to admit that because of where I come from, see, in this world, we're all living in different worlds, and not everybody is privy to the same information.
That we will rush to finish things that are important so we can do things that are not. And I believe it's an immaturity there. People just don't understand that, life isn't about having fun all the time. You have to have fun sometimes. I agree. But as an adult, there's time where you have to just say, okay, listen, I got to get down to work right now. And I don't think enough of us value that time or really understand the fruits of that labor. Somehow we think things are just going to be without that kind of effort. And culturally, there's a deficiency there. That's why I always say that there's no political solution for cultural deficiencies.
So, where did this topic come from? So, I'm going to admit that because of where I come from, see, in this world, we're all living in different worlds, and not everybody is privy to the same information. In this world, we're all living in different worlds, and not everybody is privy to the same information. We're going to start there once I bring Jeff up. Everybody, once again, I have a slate of questions that I'm going to ask Jeff. I have Jeff for a fixed amount of time. So if you have questions for him, I will share those. I will bring those into the discussion if you super chat them, just because for the sake of time tonight or this afternoon. All right, everybody, let's welcome up Jeff St. James from the Ask a Brother podcast.
Hey, what's going on?
Jeff, welcome.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you for being here, and thank you for I think it was on Instagram, or you said we could talk at some point. So thank you for extending that offer
Mhm.
as you are on your ascent in this thing.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for welcoming me into your space.
Okay, all right. Well, let's jump right in. So Jeff, myself and everyone in this live audience knows or has an idea of who you are, but there will be people from my family in particular, for example, who don't know who you are. My uncle Ice, for example, asked who you are when I posted your picture in my community tab. So to start off, who is the godson? Jeff St. James, founder of the Ask a Brother podcast. For my family, the folks in Buffalo, and for the folks who don't know who Jeff St. James is.
Yeah, as you stated, my name is Jeff St. James. I am a licensed therapist and have been working in the field for a little over a decade, actually. Worked in various cities, various domains, including prison, schools, and now an outpatient setting as well. So all three being in urban settings, of course. And, just decided to finally try this podcasting thing again at the top of this year. And it seems like the conversation I had with the ladies in Canada, that was one of the key things that I think a lot of people latched onto. And, it went viral back in July. And then from there on in, I've just been really busy between work and my commute, seeing clients still trying to do the podcast and stuff. So opportunities like this, I try not to pass up whenever I'm introduced to other new audiences. And although I'm a therapist, I'm also like everybody else. I'm curious about a lot of different things, and I decided that my channel would be a channel where we can cover a range of topics, and I won't act like I'm an expert at everything as much as I try to share what I believe and what I think, and then also making space and room for other people who I think have very interesting concepts, ideas, and voices, and bringing them to my audience as well. That's pretty much what I'm doing right now. And, it seems like every time I kind of start talking, before you know it, somebody either loves it or somebody hates it. And that's, I guess, how the brand's been growing over the last 3-4 months.
Yeah, that's how this goes. Somebody either loves you or hates you. And for context, those watching who are not familiar with this, there are a lot of people YouTubing and content creating, and you might be in obscurity for a while, but you have that one conversation and then you just shoot to the moon, or you just get the spotlight on you, and you have your moment, and that's when you quote unquote go viral.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a social media thing. So a little bit about your background. If I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure it was you. You told us a lot of stories in the beginning about who you were and where you came from, but I think you told a story about your mother making a pivotal choice educationally as a youngster to put you in a specific school, to take you out of a specific district. Was your mother your primary parental figure? Do you come from a two-parent home, and also what was your educational path like early on?
Yeah, my parents, I grew up with both my parents up until about 13, 14 years old. And then my dad left the primary residence and I stayed with my mom the rest of the time. But I still saw my dad and I just not obviously as much. But as far as the educational decision, there was a public school that, it was just a lot of concerns relating to violence and the quality of education that was being offered. And her, like many of the other parents in the area, there was a trade school that was in a fairly nice area. And I guess a lot less distractions and a lot less potential risk for things, I guess, going wrong. So, my parents, I guess, talked about it and decided that would be the school I would go to. And, I ended up meeting a lot of really great friends and teachers. And some of those friends now this was over 20 years ago by this point, but some of those friends were even in my wedding uh, 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 2 years ago now. So yeah, it's I'm glad that she actually made that decision. And it may go into that particular program and not program, particular school. It did kind of help prepare me for going to college and getting me acclimated to kind of not get hit too hard with all the new stuff that you were going to find out in college. So kudos to her for being able to kind of think forwardly about what opportunities might be available to me if she just shifts one school to another.
Okay, everybody, I made this announcement a couple of minutes ago. I have a slate of questions for Jeff, and I have we have a shot clock here. So if you have specific questions you want me to ask during the stream, it would be helpful if you super chatted them. The reason I wanted to ask that, Jeff, my brother is here in the chat,
Mhm.
my older brother by 2 years, and I remember at an early age, my mother also making a
Did I freeze? Any chance? Let me give it a little time to see if I was the one that froze. Mhm. Let me see. I'm the one that froze. Uh, looks looks like. Oh, okay. I'm gonna wait a little bit, but while he comes back, shout out to everybody that's watching. If you can, feel free to kind of share this with your friends, family, as he joins and jumps back in. And for starters, like as I stated before, obviously my name is Jeff St. James, licensed therapist for over a decade, and I love entering into this podcast space and just bringing another voice and perspective. One of the things that I think that me and Doc are probably going to be touching on is, I guess, why it is maybe I'm here, and potentially why it is, or why I'm here, and also why it is I think that more and more people are starting to gravitate towards my particular channel, which is obviously Ask a Brother podcast. One of the things that I kind of noted was I noticed a trend in the mental health field where it was heavily biased and skewed towards feminine traits, women. And that when I started to look at other things in society and culture, whether it was education, the medical field, mental health, more and more and more things were starting, HR departments, a lot more stuff was starting to kind of get skewed with being a little more anti men, so to speak. So yeah, as I started to kind of analyze it and look at it and started to realize like, whoa, now I'm starting to understand why men aren't doing so well, boys aren't doing so well in many of these domains. And then as I started to look at each individual particular um, philosophy, viewpoint, mantra, you name it, I was like, this stuff is kind of eh, not only hurting and harming boys. I think it's actually somewhat intentional. And then when those of us as myself and others started to bring attention to double standards, to things that women are benefiting from that seems to be at the expense of men, how you name it, what's going on? You good now, Doc?
yeah. I was streaming yesterday and my internet did this dropout thing, so that's
Oh,
just happened. So
all
excuse
good. Now, I was just
me.
letting your audience know that one of the things that I think potentially for why it is that maybe I guess my channel starting to get out there, my voice and my message is getting out there is because I think that there's so few men that are working professionals that have been able to articulate very well what it is that they're seeing in a way that they think both men and women can acknowledge, oh, okay, something is going on with boys, something is going on with men, and it's a cultural issue, it's a societal issue, and it's impacting a lot of different fields. And maybe many of us were just unaware of the severity of what's happening and how it's been causing a lot of the issues that we're having right now.
Okay. I hate to interrupt that thought.
No, go ahead. You good?
But no, where I was going before what happened was my mother also made a strategic decision about our education early on. She moved my brother out of a school into a better school, and one of the I'm sure in your many discussions you've heard the most educated, the most degrees, all that thing. But the other part of that is, well, how's the education of your children, your boys in particular? And it seems the mothers have a huge say and impact in how their sons do educationally.
Mhm.
So that's why I wanted
Yeah.
to, address
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that was a big thing even after I first graduated. She made it known, I'm not kicking you out the house, but either you're going to be working or you're going to be going to school, but you're not going to do neither. So I very quickly had to realize, like, if I want to keep working at the certain dead end job for the next 20, 30 years, I got to start prioritizing education. So she was a huge one that kind of pushed me into wanting to lock in and kind of focus on education more and more. Now I appreciate that she did that.
Okay. I want to acknowledge BGS Ibmore here. He says you are part of the pendulum swing back.
Hey,
Okay.
appreciate that.
All right. So can you say a few words about you're a therapist now, your professional training from that from K through 12 to where you are now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. K through 12 was like everybody else. Outside of the high school being a trade school, it's functionally very similar to most other people's, I think, experiences. As far as college is concerned, I actually tried different majors first because, like most people at 17, 18 years old, you may have an idea of what you think you may want to do. And then once you get in there, you try different things. I think when I first got in there, my first semester, I was a business major. And then after about 2 weeks, I was like, I'm not doing this. I was like, nope, nope. I just didn't like some of the classes I was taking. And then I think I switched briefly to education. And I did like that. I went to a Montessori school to kind of study and not study, but like observe like how those schools function. And I was very interested in it, but I felt like it was close, but it wasn't exactly what it is that I felt I wanted to do, for the next 20, 30 years of my life. So then I forget exactly when it was. I think it was like junior year. I ended up switching, and that's when I switched to mental health psychology, and that was when I pursued my master's in counseling. And after graduating, I kind of hit the ground running and just started taking on jobs and different opportunities. And after some time out there, I saw the importance of working towards licensure. So in Pennsylvania, as is the case with every state, they have their individual license requirements in order to become licensed. And I did the necessary things, completed practicum, internship, as well as the 3,000 clinical hours, passed the exam, applied, and was approved. And then after that, I just started gaining more and more experience between managing major projects, speaking on the behalf of companies, meeting and working with politicians. So I was doing this behind the scenes prior to the whole social media podcast and stuff for quite a while, and even was blessed with the opportunity a couple years ago of being able to be a trainer in regards to trauma work. And I actually have to do a training tomorrow, which I need to get ready for myself. And before I know it, I decided to start the podcast, and I'm grateful that with the overwhelming positive responses that I've received since entering the space.
Okay. There's a reason I'm asking you this.
Mhm.
Before I get to that, what's the difference for those of us who don't know and who kind of think they're synonymous? The difference between a counselor and a therapist?
Well, sometimes they are used synonymously. There are jobs where they'll call something a counselor, but it doesn't always require a master's. So you know that there is that little wiggle room. I do know in other countries, I believe it's the same concept when it comes to psychologists. Over here, we typically know what psychologist means. It's somebody who's gotten their doctorate in psychology or clinical psychology or forensic psychology, and may or may not have their license yet, but that's what we would think of. Whereas when it comes to a counselor, there's spiritual counselors. People use that term kind of all over the place. Whereas what's more specificity in this, I think, is in regards to just whether or not they have a master's or not. They have a master's degree. your expectation is that this person would have gone through a certain amount of training, certain level of education. They would have reviewed and learned or even been trained to understand different theoretical models of how to approach helping people, how to approach viewing and analyzing who people are, what their behaviors are, and kind of how to help them solve those issues or problems. Some are a little bit more observational in nature. Some are more curious in terms of focusing on looking things in your past. Some are more focused on motivation. Some are more focused on emphasizing changing your thoughts, and which will lead to changes in your behavior. And then others are the exact opposite. So, a lot of times it's just learning these different tools and being able to pull them out of your tool belt when the right client with particular issue kind of pops up in front of you.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to ask about that was number one, in the YouTube sphere, a lot of people are therapists and counselors, and that's been a big to do lately. Who's really credentialed, who's really trained in the field versus who's just touting the title. But
Mm,
also when you quote unquote burst on the scene, there started being comparisons between you and, okay, I'm going to say a bad word for the people who don't like him, Kevin Samuels. There were immediate comparisons.
mhm.
And but even though you are your own man, now on his show, Kevin was an advocate of counseling in general, but largely for the callers into his show, who eventually mostly became women. In your professional opinion, why, and as a viewer yourself, why do you think he recommended counseling continuously to his callers? And were
Yeah.
those recommendations well founded?
Yeah, I think the first step was he recognized that when people are reaching certain age points where they're not getting the outcomes that they're desiring, that means whatever it is that you're doing isn't working, and you probably need some outside input, and objective input that's not your family or friends, to kind of hopefully help you see what it is that perhaps you're doing wrong, or how you're dating wrong, how you've been impacted by things, and how it shaped how you show up in relationships with others. That's literally the role of a therapist. That's their job. And I think that that's good. I think that that's a really good thing that he did. The problem is that the assumption that all therapists are good or even great, and that some don't have certain intentions that could potentially, um, they not only have certain intentions, but have certain philosophical approaches to the discipline that could actually be exacerbating why it is that things seem in society be getting actually worse. So yeah, although we more people probably than ever before in the history of our country are engaging in therapy at some point of the history of their life, our divorce rates, our marriage rates, societally the violence, it seems like this is actually worse. So that was the piece that I think people like myself, Taylor Chandler, Anita, from Better Love Movement, and many others, we work in the discipline, so we can kind of try to help people to start with psychoeducationally. This is how to understand certain things, understand certain terms, but then also kind of help them to differentiate. This is how you know what's a good therapist for you versus somebody who's not. Kevin, like many other people who's not in the field, seeing a therapist is seeing a therapist. It's kind of like just going to see a doctor. Unless you look at reviews, or unless you kind of know specifically what you're looking for and needing, a lot of people, they just go in assuming that each therapist that they're sitting in front of is going to be a great fit for them. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't.
Well, one question I didn't write down, unfortunately, but that just came to me. In this context, in the relational context, what are men and women supposed to get from therapy? Is it you can be better the next time for the next person, or it's all the other person's fault, or you're fine the way you are? Like in general, just in general, because I know this could be a deep rabbit hole.
Mhm.
What are we supposed to get from therapy?
Well, firstly, you're supposed to get a space where you are able to be heard. Your voice actually matters. You're supposed to be heard. Your voice is supposed to matter. And you're then supposed to be given an opportunity to hear a potential perspective or truth, or be posed a question that perhaps you haven't thought of or hasn't been introduced to you. Number two, you're able to navigate that relationship, sharing more, opening up more, as long as it's not necessarily illegal, without being in danger of it interrupting or impacting the ability for you to continue that relationship. That's very hard to do in our normal everyday life with our family members, with our friends, especially if the issues involve them. This is where you're going to an objective third party person who can listen, can validate, can is also thinking about different systems and frameworks that could potentially explain how you got to that point, and then also give you suggestions and homework and strategies on how to address it if indeed you can, and how to position yourself in such a way where you can navigate whatever the issue is, whether it's a person, a particular place or situation. We're just trying to make sure that you're able to either heal if you need to heal, grow if you need to grow, or change something specifically so that you can have a different outcome than the current one that brought you into therapy or treatment.
Okay. Now, I have a question later on about marriage from previous generations versus current marriage, but under our current, in this current dating environment, from your professional opinion, is a significant number of people carrying trauma, some sort of trauma into a relationship after relationship after relationship, and there's just some cycle that's going on that that's just going on.
Mhm.
Is that accurate?
It can be trauma, but it could also just be the sheer nature of bad habits, bad belief systems, a lack of trust in ourselves, a lack of trust in the opposite sex or the other gender. And you know, I think what happened now with so many people going to therapy is they're using a lot of therapy words to describe very normative things and experiences. Like everything isn't trauma. Every person in your past isn't a narcissist. Like, but that's a thing now where, like, I think because so many more people, especially women, are going to therapy now more, they're now diagnosing people that they got no business claiming is this or claiming is that, and taking on identities to things that aren't even totally accurate. In reality, a lot of times what they're calling trauma is really just bad decision making on their part. And now, when you're sad and depressed and upset about how things unfolded, now I'm traumatized. That's not that's not trauma, number one. But based off of what you just said previously or earlier, about the whole comparing dating today and relationships today to what it was 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, that likelihood of people having increased rates of anger and bitterness and lower amounts of trust, that's a real thing because so many more people nowadays having so many more failed experiences with the people they're dating and getting into relationships with. If the divorce rates are high, if people are sleeping with more people than ever before, and a huge percentage of people are not in long-term committed relationships or even married, that means that they're building up a roster of experiences that ultimately weren't positive, weren't helpful. And many of them are bringing those into the next situation or relationship and wondering why things aren't working. A lot of it is because they didn't take the time to process how they kept getting themselves in the previous situations, what they needed to learn different, and what it is that they needed to do different. So unfortunately, that's more or less what I think is happening.
Okay. Before we move on, that comparison between you and Kevin, are you comfortable with that, or have you had to tell people, look, I'm doing my own thing. It's cool that you think about me when you think about him, but how do you feel when people make that comparison?
I'm cool with it. I listen, the Kevin Simmons 2.0. I think it's funny. I think we're very different. I think my tone is different. Our style is different. Our field of expertise is different. I think outside of the fact that we talk about these issues, and I think both him and myself are pretty good at articulating what we think and how we feel about it. I think that's honestly probably it. I actually don't see a lot of significant comparisons to us. Honestly, he's old. He was older than I am now, and he was involved in fashion and image consulting. And obviously, I'm on the therapy end. But he spoke on a wide variety of things, as will I. And we're just like anybody else. We just have different. We have our own unique perspective, and we're comfortable with being able to say and share in front of men and women. And that's basically it. I took on the moniker Godson because I just thought instead of people kept saying Kevin 2.0 or Kevin reincarnated, I think him being referred to as the Godfather, maybe being referred to as the Godson's kind of cool. But that's kind of it. I mean, I'm not offended by it for sure. There's always the people that's like, oh, Kevin was better or he ain't on the level of Kevin Samuels. I wasn't aiming to be Kevin Samuels or even to replace him. I'm just me. But I'm like I said, I'm not offended by it in any way, and I actually consider it an honor because I do think that he had a significant role to play in trying to wake up our community and especially our women about the severity of how dire and straits we are and how we very, very quickly need to make some significant changes if we want to reverse a lot of the direction of where our culture and community is heading.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I commented that the powerful thing is that you are who you are. You're a therapist, a licensed therapist. So you're not just, and I'm not saying he was just some guy on social media talking, but that's how he was viewed. Okay, who's this guy on this YouTube channel? What does he know about all these things he's talking about? But I think the powerful thing is you are credentialed in your field of study. Okay, let's move on. So you said something powerful in an interview, in one of your many interviews, which was that I believe you're twice married.
Mhm.
And you candidly shared and acknowledged to your wife, your second wife, that if you hadn't met her, you would have likely explored other countries for potential spouses. Is that correct? And what was it about her that made you to marry in the United States again?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I had already been dating for a while prior to meeting her. And I realized that the dating market at that time was significantly different than the last time I was single. And I'm talking like another 5, 6, 7 year period, a lapse in between. And this is still in my 20s. So that gap between when I was 21 to almost 30, it was like a night and day difference in terms of the dating market. And I'm like, what the heck? I know I'm seeing all this stuff online, but I'm still in my head was still viewing as an online thing. And then I actually had to go back out there in the dating market as a soon to be 30-year-old guy. And, I wasn't a guy that had a lot of difficulty getting access to women or being able to get even them to go out with me. But what I was seeing between the entitlement and the attitude and the flakiness, and I was like, whoa, like what's going on here? And then I was like, well, it was almost like I was being conditioned to only focus on wanting sex because relationally looking for a relationship was substantially harder. And it was like very, very beautiful women, very accomplished women, very educated women. And most of them were horrible when it came to the idea of long-term commitment. Flaky attitude, entitlement, lateness, consistent chronic lateness, juggling multiple guys and getting guys, using guys for different things. It was just like, and a lot of them were just looking through the lens of what they can get and what they could extract. It was like even ones that you would think, oh, she has some potential. They would just prove you wrong again and again. And I was like, whoa, like I don't know what's going on here, man. Like it is harder and it's very, very difficult for people who are older, people who are already married and have been married a long time. They don't really get and understand that the pool that everybody's talking about is that bad. It is. And it actually is very difficult. And when you're like myself and many of the people, especially in the Black community that are growing up, when you're growing up in broken homes, when you're seeing a lot of people getting divorces, if you went through them yourselves and you're seeing a lot of people being jaded, it seems like a lot of people are approaching relationships and dating after previous relationships don't work, primarily through the lens of what can I get and how can I protect myself. And when you're trying to date women who have that mindset, they're not looking at what they can offer you. They're looking at what you can offer them. And I was like, that was most of the women, most of them. They're super excited about the idea of being a bride. No idea about what it is to be a wife. Uh, Not interested or even open to learning what it is that men like, what they're attracted to, what they care about. And then when these conversations will pop up, I don't care what men think. They want to date men, but they don't care about what men think. They want to be in relationships with men, but they don't care about what men are attracted to and turned off by. And that was what I was starting to sense and come up with, where it was like even women that are drop dead gorgeous, they don't know by the things that I'm just seeing on their dating apps and on social media, they're already disqualified. I couldn't even see them seriously. So when it came to my meeting my now wife, at we met off of Bumble. At the time, I think I had matched with a few, maybe two or three different doctors, and she being one of them. And I had gone out with she was the second one who I had met, and it was the first time we kind of went out to eat. We talked about our dating life and how's that going and what are we looking for type of thing. And I mentioned, yeah, I'm dating and talking to people or whatever, but she was the first one that kind of made it known, like, well, hopefully after you spend some more time with me, you won't feel interested in feeling the need to have to date the rest of them. And that was refreshing to hear a woman that saw value in the man that was setting aside time to meet and get to know her. That wasn't the case with a lot of the other ladies. It was about where are we going, the trips they want to experience, the places they want to go, um, com- letting me know about what guys in the past did as a reference of what it is I need to now aim for, as if that helped him out. She was the exact opposite. So that was refreshing. And then upon meeting her family and her friends and seeing that they were genuinely down to earth, good people, I was like, oh, they exist. This is great. This is this is cool. So yeah, so that's kind of how we connected. And as we spent more time early during COVID together, it became more and more clear that she was someone who I could see a lifetime with.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like the one thing you identified when she said, well, hopefully after this experience, you won't want to go back to them. So there was some sort of selflessness there, some sort of
Well, she
uh
acted like it. She like
yeah.
it wasn't just that she said that statement, her behaviors also reflected that. She would ask, "Do I'm getting ready for work. Do you have something to eat for your lunch tomorrow? If not, make sure you stop by to grab something or I'll make you X, Y, and Z." She, not even knowing me very long, really made like my first birthday with us being together. She threw a birthday for me. She just was someone who was already starting to move and act like someone who planned on wanting to be a wife versus someone who just was wanting to be proposed to. So she was just showing a lot of traits and signs of somebody who I could see being an excellent mom, an excellent wife, a great partner, a teammate and helpmate. And the more traits that she showed, it made sense for me to start getting myself together and transitioning out of that mode of none of these ladies are serious, can't take none of them seriously, just have fun out here, to like, oh, this is actually a legitimate person who I could see building with.
Okay. I just made a note for myself when we talk about marriage then versus now, wife qualities. Hopefully we have time.
Mhm.
We have about an hour left. I have questions I'm working through. If you want to ask one to Jeff, I'll be more likely to work it in if you super chat it. I'm not trying to. I'm not doing a fundraiser here. I'm just trying to use the time as efficiently as I can. Um, Thank you for that, Jeff. So just a quick disclaimer that that conversation is being had in a lot of families. What's going on? Why isn't my nephew or my son, who's a good man, why isn't he partnered up? Uh, uh, you're not you're dating the wrong people. You're not looking in the right places. You're doing
Mhm.
something wrong. That conversation is happening in a lot of families, mine
Yep.
included. So it's very. Thank you for sharing that perspective on that. And so for the time you were first married to when you step back out, was that a decade? Because you described a very very drastic change. Just
Mhm.
just for time's sake, was that a decade? Was that 8 years, 5 years? What
Uh,
ballpark?
yeah, I would say at least 2 to 3 years in between the relationships.
Yeah.
But when I'm referencing when I was single prior to the last time, I think I was about 21, 22 when I was last like single up until the most recent time being right before I turned 30, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So that's a short time frame from when things kind of changed. The
Mhm.
environment changed. Okay. This is a softball. You might laugh at this, but talking about dating and a relationship content can cause problems between couples because some, one plus one might say, well, why are you talking about this relationship stuff when you should be happy here with me. Is your wife supportive of you talking about these things?
I would not be doing it if she wasn't supportive. I will tell you that. Or she'd be gone by now if she wasn't supportive of this channel.
Oh,
She actually set up my space.
uh-huh.
She bought me the camera for Father's Day. She set up this entire space, start to finish. She set up all the equipment. She just said, "You just need to sit down in the chair, turn on the mic, and look pretty," is what her exact words were. So she's like, I think you have a talent here, and I want to support you as best as I can. And she again, like, this is what I mean, where it's like, I'm not surprised that this is how she was able to show support and love, because these were the types of things that I saw back then, where it was like somebody who wasn't looking at the idea of a relationship with me strictly through the lens of if it would look good and what they can get out of it. It was also what it is that she thought she could help with contributing with it as well. So no, now, is she a robot? Because I know that's a big thing right now, where when men have views or opinions, especially publicly, that either a lot of people in society don't like or agree with or have issues with, the assumption is that if he's in a relationship, or particularly has a wife, then that means like she's some mindless drone and slave who doesn't have her own thoughts, views, and opinions. I mean, y'all welcome to talk to her and ask her, but we have disagreements. We have our own different views of how we approach certain things and analyze information. But when you got two very, you know, comparably smart people, it actually can be very good if you know how to talk to each other. It can be very helpful. So yeah, outside of, I would say most of the things that I talk about, I mean, I've kind of red pilled her, honestly. I think I honestly red pilled her a few years ago, and I
Uh,
would periodically show her a lot of this stuff. And I think it does take people to be in relationships and have certain friendships for them to understand different perspectives. I think part of the reason for why things are as bad as they are is because when you've been single too long, or you only surround yourself with people who think exactly like you're going to have a really difficult time understanding people on the other end. And I think that's what's happening right now, where it's like men are now moving more into the manosphere bubble space, where willing, able, they're either not able or willing to understand the female mind, the female behaviors, the female approach to life, and why it is that they do or don't do certain things, and how to navigate that if you want a successful relationship with women. They'll surround themselves with a bunch of men who reinforce a lot of their biases and experiences without acknowledging, well, if you still want to do life with women, that can only take you but so far. You're still going to have to figure it out with a woman at least. And the same is true where if you surround yourself with the sisterhood, and they all the toxic things that potentially should be challenged and addressed, you all don't really do, and you don't really hold each other accountable or ever tell each other the truth. It's going to be very difficult for you when you're used to looking at things only through the lens of women and how women think and feel and see things. It's going to be very difficult for that to actually translate with a man that you're actually going to respect. It's probably going to be only efficient and works well with men who maybe other men don't respect, a man that's a little bit of a doormat, and a man that's a yes man. Where, yes, honey, whatever you want, honey. There's those guys that sign up, and there's those guys that exist, but the problem is most of the ladies don't want those guys unless those are the only options left. So that's what I've seen and noted, where it's like, that's probably how we're kind of missing each other.
okay. Speaking of someone who's going into the other side to see what the other side is thinking, Dr. L is here. Dr. L, I'm coming for you next. This is
Hey,
one that discussion you had with Dr. What's her name about all of her statistics.
that was
Uh,
amazing.
that
Dr.
was
L,
he
Dr. L,
is
patience of a saint.
a lot of patience, a lot of perseverance and patience, and whew, that was rough. I want to thank Castlevania Kid for the $10 super chat. He says, "Love that story. I think this is related to your description of how you met your wife." Shonda says, "Good afternoon, everyone. Sounds like his second wife and brother St. James are being intentional in looking for commitment, and she wanted to be a true helpmate, not just get a ring," which is a prevalent dynamic today.
Oh,
Okay,
Dr. L said she just emailed me today. LOL. That's crazy. You
okay,
better
Dr.
block her,
L.
brother.
Yeah, I noticed you have your email address and your ticker. That's on my list to do, to write it down. And I'm going to reach out, because that's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and I think that's something I've experienced on the ground level here. But let's move on. So since I think this is a good point to talk about your red hat. Since going viral after talking to the two Canadian feminists, I've seen you interviewed by a lot of people, and I've seen you interview quite a few people. What are the main points you're looking to advance and get out into the ether? What are the needs that you see that need to be addressed by someone like you, Jeff?
Yeah, number one, probably one of my most important values right now is freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, and that includes speech that you may not like, that speech that you may even be offended by. I think that the reason why we're becoming more politicized, more divided, unable to understand certain perspectives is because in each field, it seems like there's things that you're allowed to say and things that you're not allowed to say. In dating, it's very obvious and clear. Relationships, dating, and even just between this thing between men and women, socially, it's not acceptable to point out things that women do wrong for some strange reason, without being labeled something misogynist, hates women, gay. That's been something that's definitely influenced college departments. It's influenced social media. It's influenced even just relationships. Men will say, like, they're living lives growing up with their mothers and even with the women they're with, where a lot of these people don't apologize. A lot of them don't take ownership for things. They're used to living in a world and environment where if something's wrong, it's just the guy's fault. So when a relationship ends, when a marriage ends, when there's an issue, well, what did he do? And that's just the built-in assumption. She's innocent until further notice, and he's guilty automatically. That's what I've been sensing as a trend. So like, I'm trying to actually help us with course correcting and saying, no, we're actually allowed to talk about anything. We actually should be allowed to be open to information or new ideas or new perspectives. And that's first on the list. Is without freedom of speech, that means we now have censorship. And when you start with censorship when it comes to sex, censorship when it comes to race. So the reason why, to some degree, a lot of people are now talking about Black fatigue. I have my personal views on it, which I hope to touch on another time. That's a response to an era where a huge percentage of people around the country felt like for the longest time, if they ever pointed out something Black community or Black individuals was doing specifically, they automatically were being called racist. If you speak on the undocumented situation and it's not in the affirmative of being open to open borders and fine with people who came here illegally still being allowed to stay, if you speak on anything about that and it's not positive, now you hate immigrants. So what I'm learning and realizing is there are nefarious groups who are picking within each field and each major topic and saying, if you don't consent and agree and affirm whatever the current standard is in this area, now all of a sudden we need to attack you. You're not allowed to say that. We need to now come for your license, come for your job, come for your resources, sue you into oblivion, and try to control you until you shut up and remain and get back into compliance. That's a real thing. And I think my channel is trying to approach it from more of a professional but diplomatic way, of instead of just being like, I'm going to go full red pill and just say it how I need to say it. I still got a job. I still have a family that depends on me, and I'm not rich yet. So, I have to look at these things through the lens of, I see that this is a major issue. And if we don't believe in the concept of freedom of speech, how can we ever get to the point of us actually hearing each other and listening? So that's like number one, numero uno of like what my channel is about and why it is that I think that that's like such an important thing that I think more content creators need to be mindful of. That's first on the list. The second is the divide between men and women. I think that, yeah, there's going to be people who just feel like when you say something I don't like, they're going to interpret that as you hate me or you hate the group that I represent. But there's also going to be more reasonable people who's going to acknowledge that women aren't always right and men aren't always wrong. And that's okay. And in order for us to improve on this, somebody has to continue to speak on it. Somebody has to bring it up. But the difference is in comparison to a lot of, I think, reaction channels, myself and others that's a little bit more proactive in this space are trying to also come up with solutions, come up with strategies, come up with legitimate suggestions of this is where we are, this is how we got here, and this is what we can start to do about it on a group level, on an individual level. And the last piece is if you take the dividing issues like relationships, politics, philosophical views on different things, as well as the need for freedom of speech, if you then invite people into your space, especially like people who I do interviews for, to be able to give them a space and platform to introduce that to my audience, and then push for us to start to read more and not just get all our news and information from social media and just whatever it is that we're watching, but also like get back to reading. I think that's the best that I could do of helping to influence culture a little bit. I know I can't change the world, but I know that there's people who bought a book this year who haven't read a book in maybe 5-10 years. I know that there's people who literally reached out to me and said, I now understand my husband in a way that I never thought before, or I'm going to take that approach and try it with my girl. That's what this was about, or wow, I used to think this about the people who voted so differently to me. And now I see it from a whole new lens. And now I don't see them as subhuman. Now that I see them as just my neighbor who has a different set of things that are a priority to them. And if that's my impact with this channel, then I'm grateful.
Okay. I want to thank Captain Obvious for the $5 super chat. He says, great show. And I want to acknowledge BGS Ibmore, who I was going to say the ringleader, but the epicenter, that's a better name for him, the epicenter of the Black Manosphere.
Mm-hmm.
He says 70 watching over here. Jeff, I think this is another this is a good opportunity to talk about your red hat, because some people are going to look at the hat, not read it, and say, "Oh, Anwar has a mega person on his platform." You want to say talk about your hat, make masculinity great again?
Yeah. Obviously, it's a fun spin on the whole MAGA hat phenomenon, and it's a Black man wearing it. And I know, of course, people who don't read or couldn't see the reading wouldn't instantly make those connections, and that's actually intentional because I want us to get into the habit of listening more and not just reacting. And and this is funny. Women are complaining more than ever before about where's all the men? Why is masculinity missing? And then I'll wear a hat like this, which I'll touch on later. I think is reflective of the direction of where a lot of people are going, especially politically. I think that a lot more people are recognizing that as we've deviated further and further from certain traditional norms, certain expectations, as things have become more egalitarian, quote unquote equal, so to speak, there's been a lot more issues that's kind of resulted as a consequence of this. And I think one of the ways that we're going to get back to any semblance of things improving is actually if men start stepping up, being men again, taking charge, taking direction, and being intentional with the women that we're seeking to give children to, give access to our resources to, and to build lives and legacies with. I think if we get better with just that piece, families will be better, structure will be better, outcomes will be better, and that'll even lead to potentially tangible things in society will start to shift and change as well. So despite popular belief of like, oh, it's just all the blame of feminism or all the blame of this, all the blame of that, I think we're at a space where if men learn and observe of how we've deviated, how we've fallen, how we've had certain shortcomings that's led to the result of how we get here. The only way we're going to get here is not waiting for the children to change or waiting for women to change or waiting for the culture to change. I think it's each individual man making a decision of how do I need to show up in this area as a man so that the people that depend on me aren't being failed, that they're being served, that they're being protected. And what does that look like? And who do I offer that type of benefits to? And I think that if men start being more mindful of our resources, of our seed, of our energy, of our time, and investing it in the people that deserve it, especially the ladies that deserve it, that's the beginning of making masculinity great again.
Okay. You mentioned we're in a more egalitarian society now. I'm going to ask you about blank slate theory next, but I'm sure you've heard the principle of a Chesterton's fence.
Mm-hmm.
And I know religion is a major flashpoint for some people, but when you take those fences out, and you become more egalitarian, you start to think, okay, well, maybe there was a reason that some of those fences were there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So we looked. The goal was to make progressive, yep. But in many ways, it's just unleashed more chaos. Okay. Blank slate theory. Blank slate theory. As a scientist myself, I personally want to ask you about blank slate theory. What is it, and why is it significant? I suspect it's related to altered gender roles. But for the unfamiliar people, what are the cultural and social changes you have observed that have altered the dating/marriage landscape? But first, before you talk about that, are those related to blank slate theory? And what is blank slate theory?
Yeah, somewhat. So blank slate theory, for those who aren't aware, is I believe in the Latin, it's like tabula rasa. It's the concept of, it's a philosophical viewpoint where basically it's the one half of the argument or discussion about nature versus nurture. All right. So one set of people in society and even in mental health psychology spaces, they have a belief system that a lot of why we are the way that we are is based on what we've been born with, what we've inherited, what we've been born with, what we're inclined to, how we're psychologically hardwired. Whereas the opposite end is people who believe, instead of it being more so nature, they see it as more of a nurture issue. That all human beings are basically born with a blank set, like basically a blank slate in terms of values, beliefs, knowledge, desires, urges, motives, etc. And that all of that you're eventually going to adopt and learn is based on culture and environment and what you've been taught or shown. The problem is that the people who lean with that view, when they apply that to the sexes or the genders, there's going to be some inherent problems. So the blank slate theorist is going to believe that, in essence, outside of some bodily external differences, outside of that, they pretty much see that men and women are basically the same. That's their view. And as a result, the standards, the expectations, the requirements, everything should be seen and viewed as exactly the same. So if a man can have sex with a lot of women, women should be able to do the same. If a man can work 60 hours a week for the next 30, 40 years outdoors or do X, Y, and Z, a woman should be able to do the same. So they'll take it and apply it not only to voting rights and the ability to purchase things and inherit things, and they start extending it to more and more and more areas. The problem is that there now becomes an expectation that both parties, both sides are supposed to now have the same outcomes and same standards across the board. So if they see distinctions, if they see, oh, in this area, men seem to be kind of dominant, men are dominating that space, there's more men in this space versus women in that space, they'll see that as a form of inequality and not choice. Well, so the blank slate theorist is going to say this is a problem. We need to now put in policies, laws, and quotas to try to change that issue, even if it's a very natural phenomenon between men and women. So as an example would be like a lot of boys are naturally inclined to being very physical and doing things with their hands, especially for work. That's just what it is. Their bodies are hardwired and designed to be able to endure significant temperature changes, be able to be outdoors for longer periods of time in the heat and in the cold, be able to go further, walk longer, lift heavier items. This is just a part of the male anatomy. But the person and the jobs that require that type of work are going to be dominated by men because of their physiological reality, their biological results of what they have to allow them to do it. And then there's ladies who won't do a lot of those types of jobs. And the blank slate theorist is going to conclude it's because society isn't encouraging women. They're not providing the opportunities, the X, Y, and Z. And the reality is all these jobs that women don't want to do, they can go and apply for today. But the part of the reason for why perhaps they're not as interested in doing it, they don't want to do it, is because a lot of them know they'll get tired, they'll be exhausted, it's not even interesting to them, and they end up they'll get more educated than the men, and then end up doing many of the same jobs that their mothers and grandmothers were doing 20, 30, 40 years ago. Because I think that there's limits and there's weaknesses to the blank slate theory. And the same is true. They can get pregnant. I can't. So it's a very obvious thing to those who actually look up, what's the flawed strengths and weaknesses of this particular model and view. That's not to say that the baseline of it can't be translated in terms of voting rights and representation and the right to apply for a job and the right to get an education. We all should be allowed to do that. But the execution of it is where there's going to be problems.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. It's kind of staying in the realm of manhood and masculinity and this new age thinking, this blank slate theory and egalitarianism. One word that we as a society are very fascinated with now is patriarchy. To your knowledge, and I don't know if you thought about this, is there a such thing, or has there ever been such a thing as a Black patriarchy that you're aware of?
Yeah, this is a tough one to a degree. So
Yeah.
you can
ponder it. I mean, we can talk later about it. That's fine. But
no. Yeah. So for starters, I'm glad you asked Black patriarchy versus the standard patriarchy, or what I would really associate as the white patriarchy. Honestly, there is such a thing as a Black patriarchy, but it's not nearly as expansive, as powerful, nearly as impactful as the patriarchy that women are claiming is what justified the need for all these waves of feminism in the first place. The Black patriarchy was never in control of society. The Black patriarchy was never in control of laws. The Black patriarchy was never in control of a lot of things, so to speak. To be fair, because they didn't have the economic or political power to enforce a lot. Which explains why other groups and entities was able to come in and disrupt the Black community as easily as they were able to. So the respect. So that's one. But did aspects of the Black patriarchal model exist? Yeah, post slavery. To some extent, I think it would be fair to acknowledge. But even then, it's like, I think there was structure. I think there was still a standard of respect for men and their leadership and their views on things. But we were probably far closer to communal, egalitarian approaches with some things around the edges that still would be, she can handle this, I'll handle that type dynamic. But it's nothing within the Black community. It was nothing compared to what it is that feminists are claiming that they're fighting against. Most men, and 99% of men, weren't actually taking part in the patriarchy that women are talking about. 99% of men aren't the employer that's turning you down because you're a woman or not giving you promotion. Most of those men are just working alongside you. Oh, what's the percentage of men who have never assaulted a woman? What's the percentage of men who's never weaponized a woman's gender against her? It's a huge percentage of men who's never been in the positions to really do what women are claiming all men do. And that especially is true for the men who had the least power and least influence in society. So yeah, I can say it kind of sort of existed. And actually, I appreciate that, Mr. Donnie Mack. It actually is more a utilitarian approach, is what I think the Black community actually adopted post slavery, during Reconstruction years and during Jim Crow. I think that we looked at what it is that we thought each party was going to be good at, efficient at, and we leaned into those spaces, and less about like this patriarchal. Because when I think of real patriarchy, this, I think of what's in ancient texts. The Bible is an example. Islamic texts, other settings where they have a much more rigid historical traditional basis for what women can and can't do, what men have ownership over, what they have say over. First of all, a lot of that really didn't need, like, that just wasn't what people were making it out to be, especially over here in the West. but it was true that there were obvious things that were related to the patriarchy for sure. But like I said, the Black patriarchy, it just wasn't. A lot of Black women are reacting to the quote unquote Black patriarchy as if it was the same thing as the actual patriarchy that was exhibited and placed onto our culture and society by rich white capitalists. Like that's not really a tangible truth or reality, honestly.
Okay, thank you for that, Jeff. I want to acknowledge this super chat by Ghetto User. He said I would catch your podcast support out of the 716. All right, Buffalo, Western New York. Interesting content to say the least. Thank you for that, Ghetto User 49. Okay, Jeff, we're coming down the home stretch here. So media. So, the argument could be made that much of the media programming that we're seeing is causing a lot of this gender/social dysfunction. You're a father yourself now, with a youngster, a daughter, I believe. If you were a high level executive, what kinds of shows would you like to see or bring back? And do you agree that media has caused some of this, what we're seeing today?
Yeah, I think it's either number one or number two in terms of the tools and weapons that were used or weaponized against the population to get us to this place. I think without the media, without social media, without television, without movies pushing a lot of the stuff, music videos included, I don't think we would be as far along as we are in terms of being so divided. I absolutely do believe that it has a major role to play. The concept of gender war, none of us thought that up on our own. We got that from the internet. We got that from social media talking heads. The what is it called? Reality TV. What I've seen in a lot of music and a lot of shows and a lot of movies is a lot of 90% of the time it's something very toxic that's being pushed and shown. And one of the clearest signs was the decline from the 90s till today in terms of the competent father in sitcoms. That was a thing where when I was growing up, and I'm not saying I'm super old or anything, but like when I watched a lot of shows when I was very young, I just remember a lot of shows where I can remember a whole family, a mom, a dad, and kids or teenagers. The dad had say. They got along generally. There was structure, and the father was respected. And then over time, the father kind of became more of a joke. Mom became more of the lead, and then it got to the point where it's like you don't even remember the names of a lot of these men or fathers because they're just seen as kind of irrelevant. And I think that's kind of how culturally we've moved. And obviously, a lot of the talking points that people are using now, where it's like when men say something or give an explanation or perspective on something, now you're mansplaining. When they're trying to point out something that they see that's happening in culture that they don't like, that's happening amongst the sexes, especially amongst women, he's being misogynist or sexist. So now I'm like, well, wait a minute. So they've used the media, to use the education system, they use all these different fields to kind of use weaponized language to kind of curtail men's behavior, and not curtail men's behavior away from being abusive. It's curtailed men's behavior to being lesser versions of women, where basically they're trying to say, you need to think, you need to emote, you need to respond, you need to communicate like women, and then all will be well. And I think that as we've gotten more emotional men, I think as we've gotten less grounded men, we become less safe, it's become more destructive. And in the end, both sides end up, hating each other and not being anywhere close to where we would have been if the media didn't have such a significant role to play in terms of the propaganda.
Yeah, yeah. As a Gen Xer, a mid-70s Gen Xer, I'm dating myself. One show that I thought about that they took off, and that I saw some clips of a couple months ago, was Rock. And I don't know if you're not in your head, so you remember Rock. And I remember that show was about. I mean, he wasn't a quote unquote high value man. Eleanor loved him just the same. That he was a trash man,
Yep.
but he was a protector. He was a cornerstone of that Baltimore community, and he was a protector. He was masculine. He was ready to throw hands with the neighborhood drug dealer and take a
Hmm.
bullet for the neighborhood drug dealer if he had to, but it was to protect his family and to protect his wife. And you don't see shows like that anymore.
Nope.
You just don't.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the male side, a lot of it now with the biggest shows are usually hinged on drug dealing, on criminality, in cop shows, and then with the women is these powerful business women who are, taking charge and checking toxic masculinity in the workplace and all this other stuff, which is fine, but this idea of like just normal relationships, that's kind of gone. That's almost non-existent now, and with a lot of media and what they're kind of pushing and promoting. And part of it is because we as consumers um buy, share a lot of the toxic things that we're talking about. And the things that are positive, we either don't see, don't promote. And then before we know it, it's gone because the advertisers and the people, they're going to go where the eyeballs are. So, the media can show what they want. They can put out all the reality shows that they want. Still have to decide if I'm going to watch it. So that's what I've been learning personally, and I've even shared it with she can watch what she wants, but even when she tries to get me to watch a lot of shows, I'm now making it known that I'm not going to watch everything with you if it's just stupid debauchery that just is making us look horrible as a culture and society, especially amongst the Black community. A lot of women or her girlfriends will watch this stuff, and it's the same with me, where it's like I realize now it's like I got to start with me, and I got to start with realizing like what does that do when I'm only watching the worst examples of a particular group or community? How's that going to shape my perspective? If I can't remember if it was like 6,000 or 7,000 murders in the Black community or something for 42 million Black people, but now everybody in the world is thinking that our community is just indicative of baby mamas and murders. That's the result of the media, and what we push and what we share. So it's not for everyone, and everyone, some of us, like me included, I can listen to music when I go to the gym that's toxic and crazy because it pumps me up and gets me right, but I'm not going to act on it. I
Right.
don't know, but I don't think that that's the case for a teenager. I don't think that's the case for people who are substantially younger, who are going to be more impressionable, who are growing up with these images for long stretches of their development. At least when I was young and even up to being a teenager, a lot of the shows you're referencing were still there at that point. So I saw the transition as I was going from high school to college, but at least I was a transition. Gen Z, they're just born into this. This is actually all that they say. So yeah, so that's what I think.
Okay. Well, I think that underscores the importance of having solid parenting, and then that's an uncomfortable conversation because then you have to ask, well, the people who are parents, or are they thinking about being parents and what's best for their children, or are they just thinking
Mhm.
about the moment? That's a whole separate conversation. But I've had times working out listening to Rick Ross and
Yep.
Gucci Mane, and that's just the music. It's not my real life. So I second your notions on that. Well, okay, looks like we're just gonna make it time wise. We're gonna circle back to marriage here. Um, I I saw your George Fraser clip on Instagram. I've covered him and his current quest quite a bit here in terms of the Black community going extinct, and we only have so much time.
Mhm.
How has do you want to say a few words about modern marriage versus traditional marriage, and can Black marriage in this country be saved?
Whew.
I know
Oh,
that's
man.
we have to dedicate a whole show to that one, but
Nah, that was really, really good question. Let me start with the latter. You said, can Black marriage be saved? Um, I'll give you my optimistic answer and I'll give you my realistic answer. My optimistic answer is yes, but probably never to the degree that it was before. It'll probably never, ever, ever get to the degree of where it was before, if I'm honestly speaking. I think the cat's been let out of the bag in terms of as we've seen women in general and our women get more rights, more privileges, more freedoms, we've seen how they responded and behaved once they got them. And men will never unsee what they saw in our women. They saw the ghetto-ness, they saw the debauchery, they saw the lack of respect in men. They saw and hear things like, we don't need men. Men are irrelevant. Do we need men anymore? We'll choose a bear over a man. All men are this. All men are that. All men are dogs. They've seen the Aisha Curry examples, the Jada Pinkett examples of how when women share too much or do too much in the public space, how they'll constantly defend women no matter what they do. And they'll constantly demonize men, even when they don't have all the facts or, the case hasn't even been ruled by a judge or a jury. If a man's involved, a woman's involved, we see how a lot of them move. So just on the male side alone, there already is going to be that there's a generation between just above the millennials and the millennials, especially the older millennials. There's a percentage of men that's never going to marry. They've already made that decision off of them seeing how bad things have gotten with what they've observed just in the women alone. On the flip side, there's a percentage of women who have seen what they've seen in men, partially because of personal experiences, personal choices with the men they've actually done life with, the men that they chose, the men that they slept with, the men they gave children to. And when it didn't work, so many of them are so jaded and so many of them have such negative views and perspectives on men. They're now functionally at a place where they see men as adversaries, as enemies, as predators. They don't see us as companions or partners or leaders. They see and I think they've also equated, and this is out of every single demographic, the women, to my knowledge, have a higher educational rate than the men. All of them. White, I think Asians, the men and women kind of take turns. I think Latin, Black, all the women are pushing to get their education. There's one group where there is a very common thread of taking the view of having a higher level of education and seeing that as being better than all the men that don't have that same level of education. And that's our community. So when people ask me like, well, what are your thoughts about the state of the Black community and marriages in the future? Well, if one sex sees, meaning men, sees so many of these horrifically bad attributes, where statistically, I think before the age of 29, I think women have a much more likelihood of having children prior to 25, or I think it's prior to 25 than their male counterparts. And then men start focusing in the Black community and having kids at 30 plus to start their families. That means a lot of the pool of Black men that are waiting till 30 plus to have kids are entering into a dating market where they want to start their own family. A huge percentage of the women already have a packaged family for him ready with the kid or kids that they have from one or multiple men. Like that's a model that's just clearly not, a lot of men are just not going to sign up for it, period. They're just not, on top of the trend that they saw with women in general, in terms of divorce rates, in terms of alimony, in terms of weaponization of the child support system, in the family court process. So like, no, optimistically, I'd be hopeful for it, but from a pragmatic and realistic level, no. I actually think that we're going to get to a place where it's going to be a line that's drawn between those that see the value in the opposite sex and those that don't. And those that do, whether it's legally married or married through the church or a mosque or whatever, there's going to be those that see value and come up with their own arrangement of how to do life together. And then there's those that's just going to always be talking about how the other side is toxic and bad and evil and wrong. And if the marriage rates are going to improve over the next 10 to 20 years, it's going to be because a whole lot of men would have settled for women that are older, can't give them children, and are bringing children that weren't his to the table. And women signing up to be with men 5, 10, 20 years from now that would have never been their first, second, or third choice that they felt they settled for. That's what's more than likely going to be in the future if the marriage rates are going to return, because the people, when they're in their prime, when they're in their 20s, the ladies think that, they can keep waiting until a certain point to start family and get serious and get out of their phase, which for me, I don't, and personally, I'm not going to call it a whole phase, but like the 304 phase or the have fun phase. I'm going to be honest with you. It's just not enough men for them to end up being on the other end of men that they actually want, that's going to actually take them seriously when they've waited too long to do that. So no, I think that a lot of them will be the bitter aunties. They'll be the bitter men that'll talk about the opposite sex until the day they die. And they'll use each other for sex as needed. They'll use each other for resources, certain experiences, but they'll never get to the point of them being able to potentially learn what they needed to learn earlier so that they can have a different outcome. As far as, and your previous question to that, what was it again? If you remember. Oh, it looks like he might have froze again. Oh, he did. All right. If y'all remember, I think he asked about marriages or relationships in general. I guess I have a strange feeling that the birth rates are declining. So as birth rates are declining, as relationships are in shambles, I think that I'm going to see a scenario where at least men who have the means and ability to find a suitable partner, if they can't find it here, they'll just find it in another race, culture, or abroad. And then the ladies, they're kind of going to be in tough luck, because when it comes to the ladies, there aren't a whole lot of men globally that are signing up to marry westernized American women. They're not running to the pool. They're not running to the pool where women that have such high rates of initiating divorce and breakups and seeking child support, men around the world aren't signing up outside of getting a green card to, the women that divorce the most, yeah, that's the pool of women I'm going to date or try to marry. That's not a reality. You good?
Of all the days for this to happen. Okay, we're
good.
at the end. Well, go ahead, complete your thought. I think you were
Yeah, I was just saying that besides the birth rates failing at the degree that they are, the declining birth rates, the difference is that the optionality for men and women changes as they get older. So women who are clearing 34, 35, 38, 40 plus, the market's never going to be the same for the majority of them if a huge percentage of the men that would have taken you seriously, want to build with you, want to start a family, and you can't offer that. Or they'll take a woman, and if you are very beautiful, if he has the option to get a woman like you, he also gets the option of getting with a woman that looks just like you and younger. So in three, most men in the globe, I just mentioned it before you got on, a lot of men around the world aren't signing up to go to the countries where divorce is the highest and being initiated the most by women. They're gonna try to get with cultures and women that still prioritize staying in marriages, staying in relationships, not seeing cooking a meal or serving a plate as slavery, not the sob stories of everything that went wrong in a relationship is because he doesn't know how to do this or do that. Like they're just gonna try to go with women that just see value in men and want the men to be men, the women to be women. That's a thing. And the more progressive that we've become, and the more assertive and aggressive our women have become, not just Black women, but women in the States in general, the less attractive they are to the sex that they're claiming they want to do life with. So yeah, in general, and in Gen Z's the wild card, believe it or not, out of this whole discussion. And the part of it is because they're split completely down the middle with major topics. I was looking at an article that came out from NBC back in September. I think they did an exit poll of like almost 3,000 voters, and they were comparing Kamala Harris voters to Trump voters, and especially male and female Kamala Harris voters versus male and female Trump voters. And the top two things, there was 13 things to choose from, and they got to pick out what their order is. That they had to pick 3 out of the 13. For Trump male voters, having children and being married was in their top 4 choices. Whereas the female voters for Trump, and I'll make sure I read it to make sure I'm not off, number 6 was having children, and number 9 was being married. So even on the female side of the conservative voting bloc, having children and being married was lower of a priority to the women, but it was still in the top 10 for the females that voted for Trump. And the male voters, those were in the top 5. Having children and being married. Conservative people who thought and voted for Trump, that was higher on the list for them than the people who voted for Harris. And then when you thought about the policies, you thought about the ideology, you thought about the practices that's being pushed, what policies are seeming to be pro-family and anti-family, pro-boys and sons and anti, divisive versus, collaborative. And it was very, very clear that to me is also representation, not just of the respondents in that study. They showed the studies even right after the election. It was split like that, where Gen Z in particular, the boys and the girls, the young men and the young women were diametrically opposed. Well, if you get a huge block of men that sees value in marriage and value in having children, and the young ladies don't, what's going to end up happening is all those men are not going to not look for a suitable woman. They're just going to go around the planet till they find the women that or bring them here to start those lives with. Whereas the ladies that's saying that's not high on the list, I'll wait till 30, I'll wait till 32, I'll wait till 35. They all want, I'll freeze my eggs. A lot of them going to waste a whole lot of money. So the reality is like, that's why I'm so conflicted, because at least one half of the gender, it's even one half of the younger demographic being Gen Z, it's the men that are thinking about the societal collapse. It's the men that are thinking about wanting to still have children and have families and being married. All those men are not going to just live the next 30, 40, 50 years alone. They're going to look for women that prioritize that, probably more conservative leaning, or they're going to go to other countries and cultures where there's certain conservative or traditional values, and they're going to give those women access to those things, their resources, investment accounts, building, traveling together, and then you're going to have everybody else. Now, what's the most concerning to me is all the liberal men that are thinking just like and being led by their liberal female counterparts. It's crazy. So that's my lens where I think that I won't be shocked if it gets worse, or it pretty much stays pretty much the same. But I also won't be shocked if it ends up doing the opposite, where there's almost like a pendulum swing. And now it's no longer as cool to be anti-family and be like so obsessed about abortion or so obsessed about certain things versus like the actual things that we know as society and culture needs to actually survive. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, as more and more jobs get replaced with AI, I think as more and more job opportunities are scarce, as government resources are tapped, I won't be shocked if the groups that are most affected, especially women, start changing their tune. And that may be the thing that kind of pushes us to kind of making this a revamp of relationships and men and women getting back along together. One thing has been abundantly clear: in westernized cultures and societies, women view the past through the lens that when men had all the rights, they abused it, they weaponized it, they lorded it over the women in their lives, so to speak. That's just how they view the past, even if it's not really tangibly true for most women or even all women. My view is that it wasn't the case for most women, because most women back in the day, when it was the suffragettes versus the anti-suffragettes, more women were against feminism than they were for it initially. Which means that maybe in my mind, I don't think all the ladies were seeing their situation as bad as the feminists were seeing it back at that time. Now, the men have had the opportunity to see the reverse. When women have gotten their rights, when women have gotten these perks, when women have gotten more and more things in the culture and in working environments and in political power, how has that resulted in changing and shaping society? Most people objectively would say, outside of women having access to vote, maybe more industries that they were in before, and be able to make their own money, almost everything else in society is worse. Women got what they wanted, and my lens is marriage probably won't return until more women lose jobs. as sucky as it sounds. I don't think it's going to be because they suddenly just have this epiphany and realize men are still valuable in cultures. I don't think that. I don't think that they're going to think that way. I think that they're going to start thinking that men are valuable when they lose jobs, when they lose access to resources, when SNAP benefits don't get kicked back on, or there's major cuts in certain areas. Now all of a sudden men matter again. But when they had the ability to replace those men, it is what it is. Kentucky, not too long ago, we saw the 50-50 custody change and the divorce rates plummeted by 25% just like that. So if less and less government intervention is in place, if less and less safeguards are in place, I won't be shocked if now the buffers of the things that ladies are able to use to supplement the lack of men's presence is gone. Now they'll see the value of doing life with another person. So that's what I honestly think will probably happen.
So when the environment changes, that brings about behavioral changes.
It can, but even if the environment didn't change, even if people want to remain stubborn, that doesn't mean that the need isn't still there. They're just trying to figure out other ways. So the intrinsic internal need is still there. They've just found other ways to supplement it. A man can hate women and he still sexually desires them. Right? A woman can still want certain things from men, but because she has other means to do it, so she doesn't have to be held accountable or controlled by men, she therefore feels like, well, I have this need, but I have another way to address it. So the need still is there. They just found another environmental intervention to be able to do it.
Okay, I'm gonna squeeze this one, these last three in. So Jeff, in that regard, what advice would you give to the 54% of remaining single and childless Black men who either want to start families or who decide to ride it out into the sunset solo? I saw your interview with Maggie, the substitute teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And what advice would you give to women who want to return to a more traditional paradigm? So you have two groups here. We're kind of sitting on the fence. What would you say?
For the men, especially Black men, stop dating liberal women. Stop dating liberal women. It's going to help you. Stop dating liberal women who base their ability of what they think of men, what they think of you, what they see of your value based off of the new current trend amongst liberal and progressive women and society. Stop dating liberal women. That's going to help you. If she's independent, if she has some traditional leanings, if she's, she has a little liberal here, a little conservative there, you can work with that. A liberal woman who's anti-men, anti-marriage, anti-family, sees abortion as not an unfortunate thing that needs to happen, but sees it as something to celebrate. Nah, just don't do it. Don't even waste your time. If you're going to pour into a woman in this society and culture, which is already a risk, let's start with the women who should already be disqualified. Don't date, don't do life with, don't get pregnant, do not have sex with liberal women. Leave them alone. They're the ones that's the most enticing. They're the ones that dress the most provocatively. They're the ones that's trying to get certain. It's not that there's not conservative women or other women or traditional women who can't burn you. I just know that they're the ones that's going to be most likely to. So for those men, you can prioritize women. There are still legitimate women who thinks that the culture is too gross, too ghetto, that there's too much debauchery. There are women, but you got to find them. And you have to look at the circle around them to make sure that she's not an anomaly surrounded by a bunch of women who are fine with those things. So as an example, I got gay friends. They were in my wedding. They can do pride. They can show up to all that stuff. I don't believe children should be at pride. I don't believe children should be in places where men's sexual genitalia, buttocks, and everything is super exposed in public indecent exposure. I don't believe that. The woman who thinks that that's wrong, me believing that, I don't think a male penis should be in a woman's prison. I don't think a male penis should be in a female locker room. The women who disagree with that, don't even date them. Don't even date them. Because it's the woman that you're probably going to be arguing with about what sex your child's going to be when they're 3 years old. That's the woman that's going to be arguing with you about your stance on why the border shouldn't be protected. Just disqualify them. Don't date them. Don't deal with them. Cut them off from the sort. Like, just stop. There's no tangible benefits in modern. If it's 2025, with everything we've learned over the last 8 to 10 years about the direction of the liberal mindset, if they think that way, if they move that way, they have shown you that they don't prioritize family. They don't prioritize the Black community. They want to focus on what they can get, and they have no care in the world about the future state of the Black community, because every stat will say one thing, and they'll do the exact same thing that's leading to the horrible stats. They'll still do it. They'll celebrate it. They'll support it. They'll do it. When Cardi B does it, they'll say congratulations. It don't matter. Like, you gotta disengage. For the ladies, you cannot keep saying that you want men to take on certain traditional values, and you keep dating tradition. You keep dealing with liberal men. I'm confused. You're saying you want a man that covers certain things, that protects you, and this, and that, but you're ending up with men who also think like you. Having children and being married isn't top of the priority. So my lens is, I think a lot of y'all that grew up in liberal spaces like myself, it's not that you got to run to the other side and now I'm a conservative, because I'm an independent myself, but I've learned and observed that there's enough of an echo chamber. It's on both sides to a degree, but one side at least acknowledges the spectrum of the diversity of thought, opinion, freedom of speech to be able to clash and go back and forth. And then there's another side that says either you're in or you're out. Either you adopt whatever the new standard is, the new trend is, the new dogma is, of whatever the thing is, no matter how controversial, weird, strange, anti-science, and anti-nature it is. If it's on our side and if it's our politicians doing it, we got to support it. Right now, unfortunately, that's the left. That's the left. That's liberals. That's progressive mindset and ideology. And I would have self-identified up until recently as a progressive, because I always want to see progress in certain areas. But now they're equating doing what you want, saying what you want, acting how you want with progress. And I don't agree with that. There's certain ideologies, there's certain belief systems that I don't adhere to. I don't believe in. I think it's also harmful. So a starting point politically, if the things that you're saying are missing in the culture, stop dating and doing life with the people who are exhibiting those things. You say women don't respect themselves, but then you're marrying and dating the women who dress as if they don't. You say, where's the real men, but you're giving children to men that haven't married you. So that's literally the foundational starting point. Is we all know what the problematic behaviors are, and we're spending our teens and 20s, and some of us stupidly in our 30s, picking and dating and pursuing and being pursued by and entertaining the people who's exhibiting the worst aspects in the culture and in the society at large. And then we're shocked when things don't work out. I want to get with a woman who at least gives me the impression that she sees value in marriage, not a woman who's surrounded by other women in her family and in her friendships that is saying you don't need a man. So to me, that's like there's a whole host of things that I think could be helpful with this, but I think that's like a baseline starting point. The second, believe it or not, is relating to therapy. And it's not to say that, if he doesn't go to therapy, girl, don't date him, or the opposite extreme, which is like, she's in therapy, so she's good to go. I don't do that. I know a whole host of people who's running the therapy, wasting a whole lot of people's time and money. And I know some great people who probably haven't gone to therapy because of previous experiences of what they've tried or what they've seen, but they're still generally reasonable people who at times may need some help or support with a life coach, with a therapist, with a doctor, or a fitness trainer or dietitian. And that if they listen and do X, Y, and Z, they'll probably improve. I say to the men, be very mindful and careful of the woman that weaponizes therapy in order to have access to doing life with her. If she's in this space where she loves it, she thinks this is and that, just be mindful. I don't say men be closed off to doing life with her. Just be mindful that if she thinks and she gets to set the terms in order for you to have access with her, that's already kind of setting the tone of how things are going to be going forward whenever you want her to do something. Who's actually doing the leading in this area? On the flip side, for men, despite popular belief, if you guys find the right male mentor or therapist, whether it's male or female, that understands and sees the value in a male perspective, it's best for you to do that now in this season while you're still single. Why? Because if you get more perspective, you get more understanding, you become more reflective, and you become more emotionally intelligent, you'll actually begin to recognize the types of women and behaviors and traits that you want to stay away from, and the ones that are very healthy that you want to pour into and try to build with as a man. So the man, therapy don't work. Therapy, if you work with the right therapist, right mentor, they can show that you talk about red pill. They're going to help you to have a whole new lens of how to understand the species that you've been unsuccessful with doing life with. They'll teach you that. They'll put you on game. They'll show you how to see things from a new lens. Ladies, on the flip side, I would highly suggest if you're serious, if you're legitimately, I don't care if you're 28, 38, 48, or you're 18, if you are serious about trying to do life with a man long term for the rest of your life, something tells me your feelings, your emotions, and what it is that you like and what you're turned on by probably isn't sufficient as a great screener for picking men. Part of it is your track record as women. When your parents or society or the church had more say, you probably slept with less people. But now that it's up on you, now you're racking up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus body counts and are saying that doesn't matter. And although it's not leading towards the outcomes you want relationally, maybe it does. So the suggestion is, I think it's time, ladies, for you to get out of the bubble of listening to social media and your girlfriends when it comes to mate selection with men. I think you need to start inquiring and getting feedback and advice from male mentors and family members, especially ones that are older and wiser than you, to help assist you with ensuring that you're making a legitimately good decision and not rejecting and ignoring men for superficial issues. And then allowing yourself to be chosen, be pursued, and engaging with and having sex with and giving children to men that are absolutely red flags that you can't see and everybody else can. So, of course, there's way more stuff we could do, but I think those are two really clear-cut things that I think are great starting foundational points that could be very helpful for both genders, honestly.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Okay. I want to be mindful of your time. We are just over two more. These are softball, I promise. Mm-hmm. On your platform, you said something interesting, which was even white collar gentlemen like me and yourself should invest in some blue collar training.
Yeah.
And also you've been very outspoken about returning back to developing a love for reading. What was your genesis for presenting those two recommendations for us?
Yeah. Well, the book thing, I think as a culture, we don't read anymore. And I think we're dumber. And I think as a result, we're more susceptible to propaganda, social media, tactics by the media and mainstream media, and not knowing how to differentiate the truth versus the lie, not being critical thinkers anymore, being much more led by our emotions and emotional or led or group thinkers. So I think when we slow down and start reading again, when we start learning about how governments function, how to identify totalitarianism and authoritarianism, and how to be cognizant of history and how we got here, you tend to just be a much smarter, more reflective person in life in general when you do that. Whereas people that don't, they're kind of only being led by whatever the news or social media or whatever gossip blog they follow kind of just posting. Now that's the news. Now that's the truth. Now that's reality. So that's one. And then number two, when you asked about trades, it's because I genuinely believe between now and 2030, a lot of the jobs that we have today are probably going to be replaced and gone. A lot of us. if you know, so yeah, so I think that it would behoove us, and especially those that think that they're better than everybody because they have a college degree, to realize that if you're doing something that a computer can potentially do in the future, the mechanic or the electrician or the plumber or whatever, you may be running to them if you're a lady in the future, and trying to get trying to get with those guys because they may be one of the few who's still bringing in a decent amount of income, and a lot of other people that's not going to be the case. And then number two, I think as men, because of masculinity, because of traditionalism kind of going away, because of the trades being pulled out of a lot of schools, we're probably, in terms of modernity, the most ill-equipped generation of men maybe ever, in terms of how to prepare, because we've gotten used to technology and living in modernity and not having to know certain skills, or because we just call this guy, or order this piece, and we don't know how to do a lot of things that perhaps we should. And obviously we can't learn or know everything, but I think as men, if we can learn something that can make our hands useful, even if we have a 9 to 5 job, even if we're doing something that involves a computer or customer service, learning a new skill, learning a new trade, being able to survive off of it, even just earn a side hustle and income from it, I think that just makes us much more useful to society, to our family, to our friends, is when we learn more than just how to type things in a computer and press record on YouTube, honestly. So despite everything that I'm doing now, me and my wife, we both said we actually planning on trying to learn a trade next year, both of us. Because what if something happens to me? What if something happens to her? So that's how we're personally viewing it. And that's one of our top goals for next year as well, is picking a trade, learning it, and putting ourselves in a position to where we can invest in some type of business or some type of stream of income. So we learn a trade, still work, and also have an investment that's kind of bringing in a little bit of extra income. I think that's the best of what everybody can try to aim for in life, honestly. We can't do it all. There's generational issues, racial challenges in terms of generational wealth not being allowed to be packed. We get all of that. In the here and now, what are you going to do about it? And as men, the men that I think that are already in the trades, and the men that are going to learn trades, and the men that are going to push it in whatever industry that they can to save as much as they can, invest as much as they can, and bring in as much as they can and learn what they need to know. I just think that those men are going to be the kings of the future. I think they're going to be the men that have the most options in life when the rest of us are struggling trying to figure it out. So I'm just sharing it with my audience because it's what I genuinely believe. I could be wrong, and I would love to be wrong. I would love to know that in another 30 years, nothing really is going to change. But the pace of which people are losing jobs are being outsourced, replaced, the growth of how AI is growing. What I see when I go in the grocery store is there's 20 registers and there's 2 people that's at the register, and everybody else is self-checkout. That was 20 people who you probably could have had a job at one point when Thanksgiving's coming up. Now they won't. So that's what I'm saying, is if you're seeing it in the drugstores, if you're seeing it in the grocery stores, if you're seeing it everywhere, it's a matter of time before it could become knocking into your field. So why not be proactive while you still have the time to do something about it? So that's why I kind of push in both those things.
Okay. Jeff, we're a little bit over. You have stuff to do later on. Thank you very much, everybody. Let's give a digital applause to Jeff St. James. Jeff,
Appreciate
do you have anything else you want to say before you depart?
Listen, man, thanks, Doc. Appreciate you for bringing me on. I appreciate any person that wants to collab with me, share me with their audience. I greatly appreciate it. Excited to definitely work with you and many of the other content creators in this space. Thank you all for hosting and allowing me to, come here. And I hope that this conversation was helpful. I hope it was actually inspiring, believe it or not, despite some of the things I said that maybe people didn't like. I actually hope it inspires us to learn, to read, to heal, and to be better people, better men and better women, honestly. So I hope this was helpful to everybody. As far as my content right now, I'm on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Ask a Brother Podcast. And in November, we're hopefully going to be launching a Spotify and Apple podcasts as well. And Rumble, I haven't made a decision on yet. Honestly, I think it's more so because I can't keep up with all this stuff more than anything else. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then, and if y'all come from this channel, make sure that y'all let me know that y'all came from this channel. And as far as my gear, like this, the shirts and everything, we'll be swapping them out every season with different colors, different statements and whatnot of different things that we think are very interesting and cool. So, you know, if you want to show support, feel free to join me on the channel as well to subscribe. All my links are on the channel. For the store, for men's group, which we do on Tuesdays, as well as all the different links for everything that we got going on, honestly. So listen, I appreciate y'all and I appreciate you, bro, genuinely.
All right. Well, hey man, when you guys assemble your Avengers team, consider me as your Hawkeye or your
Hey,
War Machine or your Falcon.
War Machine.
Yeah, make me War Machine.
That's hilarious. Nah, like I said, man, I genuinely appreciate it, and this was fun. So, we'll see, man. I'll see, you know, episodes like this, and when I put out my new episodes coming up soon, especially the one on Obama, hopefully by tomorrow, we'll see how the audience receives it. So I'm excited about that.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir. I'll be in touch. I'm going to go ahead and wind down here.
All right.
Everybody, Jeff St. James for the Asking Brother podcast. All right. Reading. You all, some folks out there said they like reading. Well, this is a good time for me to pump my book. This book involves many of the elements me and Jeff just talked about. The environment changing, the importance of male figures in your life growing up. Learning to find your way on your own as a young man. Consider this book if you like stories or if you know a young person who could use this for yourself or for the holidays. The holiday season is coming up. For my YouTube subs, I am selling signed paperback copies for $22 and the hardcover for $27. You can use one of those methods in the ticker there. Just make sure you send me your mailing address as well. And if you want to use my online store, I have an online store in case you want to use Visa, MasterCard, or Discover or whatever, American Express. I'm gonna enable my screen share here very, very quickly, and then I will wrap this up before there's another computer glitch. And thank you to Jeff for continuing to engage with the audience when cyberspace took me down. This is my online store. That price right there for the hardcover is $35. That's what the book is going for on Amazon. And that price right there for the paperback is $27. But I can create coupon codes for those interested to discount the price there. That's my online store, bigwordsauthors.com. I'm going to drop the link in the chat, and it should be below this stream in the description box. So consider this for yourself or a holiday gift for someone else. There's a super chat I didn't get to, and I want to acknowledge Two Triv's Cash App. So Two Triv, thank you for the generous $5 Cash App. Much appreciated. And the super chat. Oh my, is it gone? Nope, there it is. Lee Ali, I'm sorry I didn't get this in while Jeff was here. He says that media representation of men in general, in my humble opinion, has hurt all by causing problems in homes of all races, which the men turn outwards in public towards men of other races. Okay, thank you for that. All right, we didn't go for a whole 3 hours this time, like we did with Dr. Neil last week. So as I said earlier, Dr. L, I'm going to come for you next because of this degree thing that you just went through with Dr. Chiaku. I think that's worthy of discussion. Everybody, thank you for also a salute to BGS Ibmore, the master teacher, for bringing more eyeballs here during the discussion from your vast following. He says, drop a like. This was probably 10 minutes ago. So thank you to you as well. Thank you to everybody who commented. I'm going to read some of your comments. Shonda, there's my brother Amal. He says, great work, gentlemen. Yeah. Thank you for everybody for hanging on during one of the computer internet things. Those, you never know when those are going to happen. And maybe I need to go ahead and reset my router. Let's see. I think this Shonda has brought some interesting comments here. She says, the bigger question is, why did she get to be a wife in the first place? Typically, zebras don't change their stripes. I think she's talking about Jeff's wife. Yali said, got my passport this year and done with taking them serious here, getting therapy and planning trips now. I'm going to scroll back to Wilaya 3R says, white, there will be no such thing as a want when the USA completes its decline into Brazil /second/third world status. As men, we will get what we can. Want will no longer be in the repertoire. Some are predicting a major change at 2030. I'm going to read a few more of these. Let's see. Okay, that's a lot of conversation between you and Frank White, Wilaya 3R. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap the stream up because I have to get ready for battle tomorrow myself. Charles, Officer Faulkner, has made his way through. Passport OG, if you're watching this, feel free to snip any clips and look out for Jeff clipping some of this himself. And I'm going to clip some of this myself because a lot of powerful things were said. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please share out in your networks. Share with your family. This might make for a very, very interesting Thanksgiving dinner discussion. I know in my family it will. All right, everybody. I'm going to go. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you, Master Teacher, for sharing this. Thank you for all of your comments and your engagement and your participation. If you're a part of the replay gang, please let me know what you think in the comments section below. And my next guest, I mentioned Dr. L. I'm going to reach out to him, but those announcements will be forthcoming, so look out for those. So everybody, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you again for the participation and for the donations. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you all the next time. Bye-bye.